The wedding dinner. At my son's wedding dinner, my husband stood up and said something that changed my life forever. I remember that moment clearer than anything else. The way the candlelight trembled on his face, the hush that fell over the table, the way my heart forgot how to beat for a second. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, laughter, family, love. My son Daniel had just married the kindest girl I'd ever met, and for a few precious hours, everything in my world felt right again. But life has a way of changing its tune without warning. The restaurant glowed that night, soft lights reflecting in crystal glasses, the scent of roses drifting between tables. Everyone was smiling, clinking glasses, sharing stories. I sat there beside Henry, my husband of 35 years, feeling quietly proud. Our boy, our only child, was grown, married, beginning his own chapter. Henry looked handsome, though quiet. He hadn't said much all evening, just smiled faintly every now and then. I thought maybe it was emotion. You know, the way men get when they watch their sons take that big step into life. After all, we'd both walked a long road to reach that night together. Daniel stood and raised his glass, his voice shaking a little as he thanked everyone for coming. He spoke about love, about growing up in a house where he'd learned what real partnership looked like. I smiled, my chest tight with pride. When the applause faded and the music started again, I reached for Henry's hand. But before I could, he rose from his chair. "I'd like to say something," he said, his voice calm but strange, almost distant. The chatter died down. Even the violinist stopped playing. Henry held his glass up and looked around the room. "Tonight," he said slowly, "is a night of new beginnings. For Daniel and Emily." He paused and his eyes found mine. "And for me." A few people chuckled softly, thinking he was about to tell a joke. But he didn't smile. He took a breath and continued. "This will be my last evening as Clara's husband. I've met someone, and I believe it's time we both move on." For a moment, the world simply stopped. The music, the laughter, the air itself. I remember the sound of a fork hitting the floor. Sharp, final. Then, nothing. I just sat there, staring at him. The words didn't seem real. Not in that room filled with candles and joy and our son's future unfolding right in front of us. Daniel stood up, his face pale. "Dad, what are you saying?" Henry's voice stayed level. "I'm saying I can't keep living a lie." He looked at me, not cruelly, not angrily, just tired. "I'm sorry, Clara." And then he turned and walked away. Past our friends, past our family, past the door that led out into the night. No one moved for a long time. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes on me. Emily's mother touched my shoulder softly, whispering something kind, but I didn't hear it. All I could hear was the echo of his voice. This will be my last evening as Clara's husband. When the dinner finally ended, I slipped outside alone. The night was cool, and the moon hung low, as if it too had seen too much. I wrapped my shawl tighter and whispered into the darkness. "So this is how it ends, Henry? After all these years?" The silence answered me back, patient, empty, and endless. When I got home, the house felt like a stranger. Every photo, every chair, every small sound of the clock ticking seemed too loud. 2 coffee cups still sat on the kitchen table, his and mine. I washed them both, one after the other, just to keep my hands busy. Because even when your heart breaks, dishes still need washing, and the world keeps turning. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for decades. The cedar chest at the foot of it caught my eye, the one he built with his own hands when we were young and poor, but happy. I ran my palm over the lid and said quietly, "I guess you knew how to build things that last, Henry, even if we didn't." Then I turned off the lamp, lay down, and stared into the dark. You spend a lifetime believing you know how your story will go, and then one night, someone stands up and changes the ending with a single sentence. But what I didn't know then was that this ending wasn't really an ending at all. It was the beginning of finding myself. When the morning came, it didn't arrive softly. It came with the sound of silence, that deep kind of silence that sits heavy in the corners of a room, reminding you of everything that's missing. I woke to the gray light of dawn spilling through the curtains. The bed beside me was empty, the pillow still creased where Henry's head had rested the night before. For a moment, half asleep, I almost forgot. My mind reached for habit before it reached for truth. Then it all came back. The wedding dinner, the toast, the quiet walk to the car alone. And suddenly, that silence wasn't just in the room, it was inside me. I sat up slowly, my hands resting on the edge of the mattress, and listened to the faint ticking of the clock on the dresser. For 35 years, I'd always woken to the sound of his humming. Henry never could help himself. He'd hum when he shaved, hum when he made coffee, hum even when he was just looking out the window. That morning, there was no humming, no coffee brewing, just the sound of the world continuing as if nothing had happened. I wrapped my robe around me and went into the kitchen. The sunlight was soft and golden, spilling across the floorboards like it had every morning before. It felt cruel in a way, how the light didn't care that my life had changed overnight. 2 mugs sat by the sink, the ones I'd washed after coming home from the dinner. I stared at them for a long time, then took one down from the shelf and made coffee anyway, because routine, I decided, was a kind of mercy. The kettle hissed, the coffee dripped, and soon that familiar smell filled the kitchen. It almost felt normal. Almost. I took my cup to the porch and sat in the rocking chair Henry had built for me the year Daniel was born. The wood creaked the same way it always had, but the rhythm was off. The other chair beside it stood still. Across the street, Mrs. Harper was already watering her flowers. She looked up, smiled faintly, and waved. I waved back, pretending nothing had changed. But from the look in her eyes, I knew she'd heard. In small towns, news travels faster than truth. After breakfast, Daniel called. I could hear the tremor in his voice before he even spoke. "Mom, are you okay? There are questions in life that don't really need answers." "Still," I said softly, "I will be." He sighed. "I can't believe he did that. Not just to you, but at my wedding, of all places." I closed my eyes. "Daniel, don't carry his burden. It's not yours." He hesitated. "Do you want me to come over?" "No, sweetheart. You just got married. Be with Emily. I'll be fine." He didn't sound convinced, but he respected my wish. That's something I've always admired about my son. He inherited his father's steadiness, but not his silence. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, just listening to the quiet. The phone rang again around noon. It was Margaret, my oldest friend, the kind of friend who never asks how you are, she just shows up. "Clara," she said softly, "I heard. I don't even know what to say." "Then don't," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just talk to me like everything's normal for a while." So she did. She talked about her garden, about the rain coming next week, about her grandchildren's school play, and I listened, grateful for her gentle distraction. Before we hung up, she said, "You come have lunch with me tomorrow." "No excuses," I smiled. "You always were bossy." "That's why you love me," she said, and hung up before I could argue. And for the first time that day, I laughed. Just a small one, but it felt good. The rest of the afternoon passed in slow motion. I tried cleaning the house, but every room felt like a memory. The smell of his aftershave still lingered in the bathroom. His jacket still hung on the back of the chair in the hallway. I found his reading glasses on the mantel, folded neatly beside the newspaper. I picked them up, held them for a moment, and then set them down again. Not out of anger, just acceptance. There's a point when grief stops shouting and starts whispering. That's when it becomes real. Around 5, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I found Emily, my new daughter-in-law, standing there with a casserole dish and the softest eyes. "I didn't know what else to do," she said, "so I made dinner." I smiled, though my throat tightened. That's the kindest thing anyone's done for me in a long time. She stepped inside and set the dish down on the counter. Then she turned to me and said, "Mom, I'm so sorry." That word, Mom, caught me by surprise. She'd only been part of our family for a day, and already she gave me a word that filled an empty space. I touched her arm. "Don't apologize for something you didn't do." She nodded, eyes wet. "Daniel's been beside himself. He wanted to come, but I told him you might need a little time first." "Thank you," I whispered. "You were right." We ate together at the kitchen table, two women joined by love and hurt and hope, all in one fragile meal. After she left, I went out for a walk. The sun was setting, painting the world in shades of orange and rose. It was beautiful, painfully beautiful, in that way only endings can be. As I walked down the quiet road, I thought about all the years Henry and I had built together. Not the fights, not the flaws, but the small things. The way he used to whistle while fixing things around the house, how he'd tap the steering wheel when our favorite song came on, how he'd rest his hand on mine when words weren't enough. I realized I wasn't angry. Hurt, yes. Shocked, certainly. But angry? No. Because love, even when it ends, doesn't always leave bitterness. Sometimes it just leaves room. When I got home, the porch light had flickered on. I sat in my rocking chair again and looked out at the quiet street. Fireflies were starting to glow in the distance, tiny, living lanterns against the dark. I thought about what Henry had said, that it was time for new beginnings. Maybe he was right in a way, just not the way he imagined. His beginning was someone else. Mine would have to be myself. I went inside and opened the old cedar chest. Inside were the things that made up our life. Photo albums, love letters, small souvenirs from places we'd visited. Each one was a memory carved in time. I picked up one of the letters, the first he'd ever written me, back when we were just kids. The paper was yellowed, but his handwriting was still strong. "My dearest Clara, if we're lucky, we'll grow old side by side. If we're not, I hope you'll still smile when you think of me." I folded the letter back carefully. He hadn't broken his promise entirely. He did grow old beside me, just not long enough to stay until the end. Later that night, I sat by the window with a notebook. I'd always written when I needed to understand something. So I wrote. I wrote about the dinner, the silence, the walk to the car, but then I wrote about the coffee and Margaret and Emily, small kindnesses that stitched the day back together, one thread at a time. And as I wrote, something softened inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. Because the truth is, sometimes people don't leave because they stop loving you. Sometimes they leave because they stop loving themselves, and they think they'll find the missing pieces somewhere else. But that's their journey, not yours. When the clock struck midnight, I set my pen down. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt paused, like it was waiting for me to take the next step. I looked at Henry's empty chair and whispered, "You may have left, but I'm still here, and I'm not done yet." Then I turned off the light and went to bed. Not because I was ready to sleep, but because I was ready to face another morning. And as I lay there, watching the moonlight spill across the ceiling, I realized something simple but true. When love leaves, it doesn't take everything. It leaves behind a quieter kind, the kind that helps you stand up, make coffee, and start again. That was the morning after my world changed, and though I didn't know it yet, it was also the morning I began to find myself, the letters he left behind. I didn't open the cedar chest again for a few days. It sat there at the foot of my bed, patient, silent, almost watchful. The way old things are when they know they're holding too much truth. I kept walking past it, pretending I didn't see it, pretending I didn't care. But every time I did, I could feel the weight of its presence like a heartbeat in the room. Finally, one quiet afternoon, when the rain was whispering against the windows and the kettle had gone cold, I gave in. I sat down on the floor beside it, my knees creaking like the hinges of the past, and I lifted the lid. The scent of cedar and old paper filled the air, that gentle perfume of memory that only time can make. Inside, everything was just as I'd left it. Folded blankets, a few photo albums, a stack of letters tied with twine, and a small wooden box I didn't remember seeing before. I picked up the letters first. There must have been 20 or 30 of them, some from Henry, some from me, all neatly stacked and yellowed with age. The handwriting brought me back to a time when love lived on paper, when words were touched, not typed. When I'd open a letter and smell the faint scent of his cologne, the ink still fresh from his hand, I ran my fingers over one envelope, and for a moment I was 20 again, standing by the mailbox, heart pounding, reading his promise of forever. I smiled, even through the ache. Maybe it was foolish to keep them all these years, but love, even when it changes, deserves to be remembered. Then I noticed something odd. At the very bottom of the chest, there was another bundle of letters, tied with a ribbon I didn't recognize. These weren't like the others. The envelopes were sealed, each one addressed in Henry's handwriting, to me. But here's the strange thing. I'd never seen them before. My name, written again and again in his steady hand, to Clara. No stamps, no postmarks, just waiting. My hands trembled as I untied the ribbon. The first letter was dated 2 years ago. My dearest Clara, if you're reading this, it means I've failed to say things I should have said out loud. There's no easy way to begin, except to say that you've been my home. Always, even when I felt lost. Lately, I've been afraid, not of you, but of myself, of how time changes us. I've felt pieces of me fading, memories slipping like sand through fingers. I didn't want to scare you, so I smiled instead. If someday I seem distant, it's not because my heart is elsewhere. It's because I'm trying to remember where I put it. Yours always, Henry. I froze. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. Fading? Forgetting? I read the letter again, slower this time. Was he trying to tell me something back then? I reached for the next one. It was dated a few months later. Clara, the doctor says it's mild, just small lapses, simple things. But he doesn't see what you see. You notice everything. You always have. I see the worry in your eyes when I forget the groceries or lose my keys. I don't want to be a burden. I want you to remember me as I was, the man who built you a chest, not the one who forgets where he left the hammer. If someday I seem like a stranger, please know that somewhere inside, I still know the sound of your voice. It's the one thing that never fades. Love, Henry. My breath caught. I put the letter down and pressed a hand over my mouth. It wasn't another woman. It was something else, something crueler, quieter. I reached for the last letter in the bundle, my fingers trembling. It was dated only a few weeks before the wedding dinner. My Clara, I've been writing these letters to help me remember. Every morning I read the ones before. Some days I recognize the words. Other days it's like someone else wrote them. I keep thinking of that promise we made when Daniel was born, that no matter what, we'd protect each other from pain. I think I'm breaking that promise now, but not the way you think. If someday I do something that hurts you, please know it wasn't the real me. The real me is in these pages. The real me is in that cedar chest. The real me never stopped loving you. And if I forget you, Clara, please don't forget me. I sat there for a long time. The letters spread out around me like pieces of a puzzle I never knew existed. My tears fell onto the paper, leaving small, dark stains that blurred his words. Suddenly, the wedding dinner, his strange calmness, his choice of words, all of it made a horrible kind of sense. When he said, "This will be my last evening as Clara's husband," maybe it wasn't a confession of betrayal. Maybe it was his way of saying goodbye before he disappeared into a world that no longer knew my name. I covered my face with my hands and sobbed. Not the sharp, angry kind of crying, but the deep, wordless kind. Grief mixed with love, confusion mixed with understanding. When I finally lifted my head, The room was dim. Rain had stopped, and the sky had turned a dusky purple. I looked down at the small wooden box I'd noticed earlier. Inside it were photographs: Henry as a boy, Henry in uniform, Henry holding Daniel as a baby, and tucked beneath them was a doctor's card, folded in half. On the back, in Henry's shaky handwriting, were 3 words: "Don't let her know." My throat tightened. He'd been trying to protect me, right up until the end. But that evening, I called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, you okay?" "I found something," I said quietly. "Letters from your father." He was silent for a moment. "Letters? What kind of letters?" "The kind that explain everything," I whispered. When he came over later that night, I showed him the stack. He read them slowly, one by one, his eyes filling as he did. By the last one, his hands were shaking. "Oh God," he breathed. "He was sick." I nodded. I think he knew for a long time. He just didn't want to say. Daniel sat down beside me, pressing his hand over mine. All this time, I thought he'd just walked out. I squeezed his hand. So did I. But maybe in his mind, he thought he was saving us from what was coming. We sat there in silence for a long time, the kind that feels sacred, not empty, but full of everything words can't carry. Finally, Daniel said softly, "You loved him a long time, didn't you?" I smiled faintly through my tears. "Every day of it." He looked at me, eyes red. "Do you forgive him?" I thought about that for a while before answering. Forgiveness isn't really the word. It's understanding, and that's enough. After Daniel left, I gathered the letters and placed them back into the chest, but not to hide them. This time, I arranged them carefully on top so they'd be the first thing I'd see next time I opened it. Then I took out one blank sheet of paper, sat at my writing desk, and began my own letter. "Dear Henry, I found your words today. I finally understand why you looked so far away that night. You weren't leaving me for someone else. You were losing yourself, piece by piece, and you didn't want me to watch. I wish you'd told me, my love. I wish we could have faced it together. But I forgive you, not because you asked, but because love deserves peace, not punishment. Your letters brought me back the man I thought I'd lost. So, in a way, you came home after all. Always, Clara." When I finished writing, I folded it gently and tied it with the same ribbon he'd used. Then I placed it beside his letters. One last exchange between 2 people who loved each other in all the imperfect ways that matter most. That night, I dreamed of him. Not the man who walked out of that dinner, but the man I met under the oak tree all those years ago, young, smiling, eyes bright with promise. He held my hand and said, "See, Clara? You were always my home." When I woke, there were tears on my cheeks, but they weren't the painful kind. They were soft, healing. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat on the porch as the sun rose. The world looked the same street, the same trees, the same light spilling across the grass. But I was different. I wasn't the woman left behind anymore. I was the woman who found the truth, who remembered that love isn't about how a story ends, it's about how deeply it was lived. Sometimes I think about those letters and how they waited patiently for me to be ready. And I realize now that maybe love is like that too. It waits, even when memory fades, even when words are forgotten, even when hearts break and mending feels impossible. Love waits, quietly, faithfully, for us to find it again. It had been 2 weeks since I found Henry's letters, 2 weeks since the truth had settled into my heart like sunlight after rain. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had softened, the kind that hums quietly instead of shouting. Most mornings I'd sit on the porch with my coffee, rereading his words, trying to imagine the courage it must have taken to write them. How he must have sat somewhere, alone, trying to find words big enough for something so cruelly small. Forgetting. Every letter had brought him closer again, piece by piece. But there was still one part of the story I didn't know. Where he went after that night. That question had been echoing inside me since the wedding dinner. And then, one ordinary afternoon, an unexpected knock brought the answer to my door. It was a Thursday, the kind of day when the world feels half asleep. The mail had just come, and I was folding laundry when I heard it. 3 soft knocks, hesitant, like the person on the other side wasn't sure if they should be there. When I opened the door, a young woman stood on the porch. She couldn't have been more than 30. Her hands clutched a small purse, her eyes wide, uncertain. "Mrs. Harlan?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said, studying her face, kind eyes, a nervous smile. "My name's Anna," she said. I don't want to intrude. But I think you knew my grandfather, Henry." For a second, I couldn't speak. "Henry?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. Henry Harlan, my mother's father. She passed away when I was little. I didn't really know him, not well, but I found your name in some of his things." My breath caught. "You mean he's gone?" She hesitated, her eyes softening. "He passed last year." The words landed gently, but they still ached. "A year ago. All that time, and I hadn't known." I stepped aside and said quietly, "Come in, dear." She followed me into the kitchen. I poured us tea, because that's what you do when words are too heavy and hands need something to do. She looked around, her eyes lingering on the cedar chest in the corner. "I recognize that," she said with a small smile. "He had a picture of it, said he built it for someone special." I smiled faintly. "Yes, he built it for me." Her eyes glistened. Then I was right. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, carefully folded. This was in his nightstand when he passed. It was sealed, addressed to you. I thought, you should have it. I took it from her, my fingers trembling. The handwriting, though weaker, shakier, was unmistakably Henry's. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I asked softly, "Did you know him well?" She nodded. "I visited him at the care home sometimes. He was quiet but kind. The nurses adored him. He used to hum when he worked on puzzles, said it helped him remember things." My heart tightened. "He used to hum while shaving," I whispered. "Always the same tune." She smiled. He still hummed it, even near the end. I think it was his way of keeping something familiar. She paused, then added, "He talked about you a lot. Not always by name. Sometimes he'd just say, 'The woman with the cedar chest.' But every time he smiled. Tears filled my eyes. Did he ever remember me?" Anna hesitated, thinking. "There were good days and bad ones. But there was one time he was looking out the window and I asked him who he was thinking about. And he said, 'She used to sit beside me in silence, and somehow that was enough.'" I pressed a trembling hand to my chest. "That was me," I whispered. "That was us." We sat in silence for a moment, 2 strangers connected by the same love across time and generations. Then, gently, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, creased and worn, but the ink still clear. "My dearest Clara, if this finds you, it means I've finally run out of pages. My mind's grown quiet now. Faces blur, names drift, but somehow your voice always finds me. Maybe that's what love does. It becomes the thing that stays when everything else fades. I'm sorry for the way I left. If I'd known how to say goodbye properly, I would have. But truth is, I didn't want you to see me forgetting the life we built. You gave me 35 good years, Clara. That's more than most men get in a lifetime. When I look at the sunset here, I still see your face in the light. And I think, if love can survive memory, then maybe it never dies at all. Always yours, Henry." By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking. I passed the letter to Anna, who read it quietly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't know he could write like that," she said softly. I smiled faintly. "He couldn't. Not until he loved." She laughed through her tears. He must have loved you very much." I looked at the photo of him on my mantle. Younger, smiling, holding Daniel in his arms. "Yes," I said, "he did. In his own way. And I loved him. In mine." Anna stayed for another hour. We talked about simple things, his favorite foods, how he used to carve small toys out of wood, how he once built a birdhouse that tilted slightly to the left but still worked just fine. She showed me pictures from her phone, him sitting by a window, eyes distant but peaceful. And in each one there was something I recognized. A small lift of his lips, that old spark of gentleness. Before she left, she asked, "Would you like to see where he's buried?" I nodded, tears in my eyes. "Yes, dear, I think I would." The following Sunday, she drove me there, a small cemetery just outside town, surrounded by oaks and wildflowers. It was simple, quiet, the kind of place Henry would have chosen himself. His stone was small, engraved with just his name and 2 words beneath. "Forever home." I traced the letters with my fingertips, my throat tightening. He'd always talked about finding home. Maybe this was his way of saying he finally had. I placed a small bundle of wildflowers beside the stone. Then, for the first time since that night, I spoke to him out loud. "Henry," I whispered, "I found your letters. You kept your promise. You led me home again." The breeze stirred the trees above us, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world sighed with me. On the drive back, Anna asked quietly, "Do you think he's at peace?" I smiled. "I think he's where he always wanted to be, somewhere between remembering and being remembered." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me know the rest of his story." I turned to her and said, "No, dear. Thank you for bringing it home." And that night I sat by the window again, the same spot I'd sat in after he left. Only now the silence felt different. Not hollow, not heavy, just quiet, in the gentlest way. I took his letter and placed it in the cedar chest, right beside the others. Then I lit a small candle and whispered, "Good night, my love." The flame flickered once, like a nod from somewhere unseen, before steadying. It's strange how closure doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in the soft knock of a stranger on your door, holding an envelope that carries a whole lifetime inside. And sometimes it comes when you realize that goodbyes aren't the end. They're just love changing form. A few days later, Anna sent me one last photo. A picture of a bird perched on Henry's tilted birdhouse, wings open wide. Her message read, "It still stands." I smiled through my tears and replied, "So do I." It's been 3 months since Anna's visit. 3 quiet, golden months that have changed the way I look at mornings. I still wake early the way I always have. The kettle still sings, the porch light still flickers, and the world still turns. But something inside me has shifted. I no longer wait for Henry's footsteps or listen for his humming. Instead, I carry those sounds inside me. They live there now, gentle echoes in the rhythm of my days. I spend more time in the garden these days. The roses Henry planted years ago still bloom stubbornly, their roots deep and steady. When I water them, I talk to him sometimes, not out loud, just quietly in my heart. I tell him about Daniel and Emily, about how they come by every Sunday for lunch, how the house fills with laughter again. Life has begun to feel full, in a new way, not like before, but maybe that's the point. Love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes it means learning how to live after. One afternoon, while Daniel and Emily were visiting, I told them about the cedar chest, about the letters, the visit, everything. Daniel listened quietly, his arm around Emily's shoulders. When I finished, he said softly, "You never told me you wrote him back." I smiled. That letter wasn't meant to be sent. It was meant to be kept. Emily tilted her head. "May we read it someday?" "Someday," I said, nodding. "But not yet. Some words need time to rest before they're shared." They both understood. That's something I love about them. They never push, never pry. They just stay. After they left that evening, I opened the chest again. Inside, Henry's letters rested in perfect stillness. But something about them felt different now, not as heavy, not as haunting. I thought about the promise Henry wrote in one of his letters. If I forget you, please don't forget me. And I realized I'd kept it, not just by remembering him, but by remembering the best parts of him. That was the promise I'd kept without even knowing it. The next morning, I went into town to visit the donation center. I'd been sorting through old clothes and things for weeks, slowly deciding what to let go of. The woman at the counter, a kind soul named Martha, greeted me with a smile. "Back again, Mrs. Harlan?" she said warmly. I nodded. "Just a few more boxes. It's time they found new homes." She lifted the lid of one and smiled. "Oh, these quilts are lovely." "Handmade?" I smiled. "Yes, my husband used to say the best warmth comes from hands, not heaters." She touched one gently. "You can feel the love in the stitches." I nodded. "That's what I hope people find. A little love they didn't expect." On my way out, I passed by a small bulletin board near the door. It was filled with photos, people holding things they'd found at the center, smiling, grateful. Among them was a little girl wearing one of my old scarves, grinning ear to ear. Something about that image caught me, how something forgotten could become part of someone else's joy. Maybe that's what letting go really means, not losing, but passing the warmth forward. When I came home, I sat at my writing desk again. The afternoon light poured across the paper, golden and forgiving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to write. Not a letter of goodbye, but one of gratitude. Dear Henry, you were right. Time doesn't erase love. It just changes its shape. It becomes the quiet in the morning, the peace after the rain, the laughter of our son in the next room. I used to think our story ended the night you stood up at that dinner. But now I know it didn't end. It simply turned a page. The rest of the story was waiting for me to read it. I visited your resting place, you know. It's beautiful, peaceful, full of light. And I met your granddaughter, Anna. She's kind and steady, just like you were. She carries your gentleness, the part of you that never forgot how to care. I thought I'd never forgive you, but now I realize there was nothing to forgive. You didn't leave me. You left the world, one memory at a time, and that's not something anyone chooses. Thank you for the years we had, for the love that grew even when the seasons changed, and thank you for teaching me the hardest, truest lesson of all, that the heart remembers what the mind forgets. Always, Clara. I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the chest, the final piece of our story. And for the first time since he left, I closed the lid with peace in my heart. It wasn't the end. It was simply the moment the story found its rest. That evening, Daniel stopped by unexpectedly. He had a small package in his hands. "What's this?" I asked. He smiled. "A little something from me and Emily." "Thought you might like it." I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a framed photograph. One of Henry and me, taken years ago at the lake, sunlight dancing on the water behind us. We were laughing, young, unguarded, alive. I stared at it for a long time. "Where did you find this?" "In one of Dad's old boxes," Daniel said. "I thought it should be here. With you." Tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart." He hugged me, holding me close. "He'd be proud of you, Mom." I smiled through the tears. Maybe. But I'm proud of him too, for loving as best as he could. Later that night, I placed the photo on the mantel beside the candle. The flame flickered softly, reflecting in the glass, as if the two of us were there together again, just for a moment. Outside, the crickets sang their steady song. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. I felt accompanied by memory, by love, by everything that lingers when a story is told with a full heart. A week later, Anna sent me a letter. She wrote, "Dear Mrs. Harlan, I wanted to thank you again for welcoming me. Meeting you helped me understand who my grandfather really was. I didn't just find his past, I found my own roots. You gave me something precious. I've started volunteering at the care home where he stayed. I bring music on Sundays. And sometimes I hum his favorite tune. A few of the patients hum along. I think he'd like that. Love, Anna. I read it twice, smiling through tears. It felt like a circle had closed. Love passed down, reshaped, reborn. Sometimes I still visit the cemetery, not to cry, but to talk, to share stories, small victories, silly memories. I bring flowers, sometimes wild, sometimes from the garden, and every time I leave, I whisper the same words. I kept the promise, Henry. I didn't forget. A few weeks ago, Daniel and Emily came by with wonderful news. They're expecting their first child. When they told me, I covered my mouth and gasped, tears spilling instantly. A little one? I whispered. Oh, what a blessing. They smiled, glowing. Emily reached for my hand and said, we wanted to ask you something. If it's a girl, we'd like to name her Clara. I froze, my heart swelling until I could hardly breathe. Oh, my loves, I whispered. You've already given me everything I could have ever asked for. Then that night, as I lay in bed, the house felt full of laughter, of life, of love that had somehow survived everything. I looked toward the cedar chest one last time. It stood quietly in the corner, bathed in the silver light of the moon. I didn't open it this time. I didn't need to. Because the story inside wasn't trapped there anymore. It lived in me, in my son, in Emily, in the child that was on its way. They say memories fade with time, but I've learned that the ones built on love never do. They may blur around the edges, soften like old photographs, but the feeling, the truth, stays. I thought my story ended with heartbreak, but now I know it ends with legacy. And every time I hum that old tune, the one Henry used to hum on quiet mornings, I smile, because somewhere in some gentle place, I believe he's humming along. Thank you for listening, dear ones. Until next time. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and press the bell icon. I share new emotional stories and life lessons every day.